Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1138. Scholar of Yore. In the highlands, on an altar with eyes, arms, heads, and organs embedded in it, blood-red light surged out like a tidal wave, distorting into the shape of a deformed tree. Amidst the buzzing sound, the human bones, candles, silver plates, and gold boxes trembled, as though they could slice through one's spirit body. The surrounding supplicants instinctively bowed their heads and prostrated. Then, they simultaneously came to a realization. The Berserk Sea, Reef Island. When he saw the ancient palace above the gray fog and sensed the slight tremble of the mysterious space, Klein felt that he had a deeper connection with the so-called Sapphira Castle, one that was hard to accurately grasp. At this moment, he truly felt that place would gradually belong to him. In just a few seconds, all the abnormalities disappeared. Without any delay, Klein got the two marionettes to put away the items that were still of value, and destroy the rest. He took out a paper figurine and shook it. With a smacking sound, the paper figurine ignited with a scarlet flame as dense illusory wings appeared behind his back. When he saw this, Klein was stunned. He never expected that the simple paper figurine substitutes would have hints of Angel's Embrace. He then grabbed Kona's and Anini, using teleport to vanish from the island formed by reefs. After using several islands in the Sonia Sea as waypoints, he took a huge detour before finally returning to his residence in Backlund's East Borough. During this process, he repeatedly used paper figurine substitutes, which had undergone several qualitative changes, to disrupt divination, prophecy powers, tracking, and observation. Phew, I didn't expect it to really trigger the changes in Sapphira Castle, resulting in an unconcealable phenomenon. Fortunately, I was sufficiently careful and cautious. I wasn't careless. If I had advanced in Backlund or the surrounding areas, I'm certain that Amon and Zeradal would have already seen me. Klein heaved a sigh of relief as he hurriedly took 4 steps counterclockwise and went above the gray fog to do a divination. After confirming that he was in a safe situation, he didn't stay for long. He immediately returned to the real world, and with the help of cogitation, he began to restrain his diverging spirituality. After doing this, he took off his clothes, threw himself into bed, and fell into a deep sleep. Normally, a Bizarro sorcerer wouldn't be as exhausted as he was after successfully advancing to Scholar of Yore. He would definitely have energy left to check his physical condition. However, while traveling through history, Klein relied on his marks that could be traced back to a great distance, and his own mastery of ancient secrets that far exceeded his current level. He reached the establishment of the giant king's court in the early of the second epoch or the end of the first epoch. This was equivalent to digesting the potion. After a few hours of deep sleep, Klein woke up as he slowly opened his eyes. He sat up, pulled a pillow to prop him up from behind, and rubbed his temples. After 10 minutes of regulating himself, he was completely awake and began to inspect himself. Indeed, I'd digested most of the potion right after I consumed it. At least 80%. This is roughly what I expected, but I wonder how much more ancient history I'll have to obtain before I can digest it completely. From the looks of it, the acting of a scholar of Yore has 2 main directions. One is a scholar from ancient times, and the other is a scholar who studies ancient history. Both of them are required. The first is relatively easy because the ritual itself contains the key point of making one a person from ancient times. Once the advancement is successful, one can naturally act as a scholar from ancient times. The second point is extremely difficult. It would be alright in normal society, but in this world with true gods, devils, and evil existences, just gathering ancient information is a very risky matter. If I endeavor to gather the truth of history, I might die a horrible death at any moment without any reason. The more I understand, the greater the danger. The reason why I know so much is mostly thanks to the arrangements of a few existences, as well as the complicated fate that Sapphira Castle brings me. This makes me encounter all sorts of things. Of course, even so, I've already died once despite being a true deity's blessed. What's more, other scholars of Yore? Changing the spot of Miracle Invoker and Scholar of Yore will make acting relatively simple. Unfortunately, there's no such thing. In addition, the previous two meanings have an inclination towards ancient times. I have to pay attention to the word scholar. What must I figure out from history before I can be considered a scholar? Next, there are a few directions towards my digestion. First, I need to figure out Dark Angel Sassur's current state and truly replicate the actual process of the cataclysm. Second, I need to spend some effort to connect the history of the fourth epoch together, and not just be fine with having them in disconnected segments. Third, I need to go deep into the details from a macroscopic view. For example, the rise and fall of the Antigonus family. After confirming that prior acting was effective, and considering his future path ahead of time, Klein combined the mysticism knowledge he had gained from his advancement, and his observation of his godhood's divinity, and he had a trial run of his powers to slowly figure out the powers of a scholar of Yore. Worms of spirit can be split into 600 pieces. The godhood patterns have also changed to a certain degree. It's even more complicated, and it can showcase concepts of strength, strangeness, and supernaturalness. The changes in my godhood patterns firstly originate from the newly obtained characteristic, and secondly, it comes from the mysticism knowledge contained within the potion. This is both a result of the Beyonder characteristic and also something obtained from a higher level. After becoming a true high-sequence Beyonder, is it possible to directly change the knowledge at a higher dimension to affect Beyonders at other sequences? Deciphering a potion formula from the godhood pattern seems like an actual example. Also, at the level of sequence 3, the changes in godhood patterns are influenced by individuality. This is closely related to prayer and responses. For each scholar of Yore, the corresponding honorific names will be different in nature. This is because of different personalities, experiences, and traits. Yes, I can allow different worms of spirit to instinctively listen to prayers and respond to them when it's a relatively uncomplicated matter. It doesn't affect my other actions. The specially marked ones and more complicated matters will be handed over to my actual body. A scholar of Yore can use a worm of spirit to act as a god, but what about other sequence 3 Beyonders from other pathways? It's impossible for them to respond while sleeping, right? Heh. I'll think of my honorific name as a scholar of Yore later. I'll first study the specific abilities. A scholar of Yore's main ability is to obtain help from history. This is split into two parts. One is to borrow strength from my past self. This is rather embarrassing for me. It's currently useless because the past me is definitely weaker than the present me. Yes, when I was hanging above the door of light above the gray fog, I was just an ordinary person. For those who were important figures in the past but are now weak due to all kinds of reasons, this is a godly skill. One can be a baby crying for ice cream while engaging in a sequence 1 battle. It would be impossible to find any weaknesses. The only problem is that it's not long-lasting. Of course, as more time passes after I become a scholar of Yore, this will begin to show its effects. I can often borrow strength from my past scholar of Yore self so that I wouldn't have any moment of weakness, even if I were to suffer serious injuries. To a certain extent, this is something that's self-perpetuating, preventing myself from ever being in a nadir until my spirituality is completely drained. Yes, before my spirituality is drained, I can always borrow energy from my past self. There's no limit to the number of times. As for my current spirituality, even without the process of recovering, I can borrow power nearly 10 times a day, maintaining it for 5 minutes each time. The second part is to summon images from the historical void. It can be humans or objects. The more detailed and the better the understanding I have of the corresponding piece of history and matters, the higher the chance of success is and the longer it will last. Similarly, the lower the target's level is, relative to me, the higher the chance of success and the longer it can be maintained. In addition, increasing my affinity with the target will increase the chances of success and the time it can be maintained. These are the 3 conditions to succeed. Furthermore, when summoning someone of a higher level than myself, or an item, even if I barely succeed, the final projection will only have a portion of the strength and quality of the original. It can't be one who's at full strength. Also, I can only maintain 3 images summoned from the historical void at any point in time, including those summoned by my marionettes. Currently, even if it's the most ordinary item or something that was once mine, I can maintain its availability for a maximum of 15 minutes. The fact that the target has to have a close relationship with oneself is worth rumination. In essence, borrowing power from one's own body is also a form of summoning. It's just that one's relationship with oneself is extremely close, so there's no possibility of failure. It's an extreme example. In other words, if I were to summon the important figures from the historical void, it would be best to establish a friendly relationship with them and maintain it for a long time. Yes, if I were to summon Mr. Azek's projection, the chances of success will definitely be higher than projecting other angels. How is this a beyond power? This is obviously studies related to EQ, relationships, and interpersonal communication. As he sighed with emotion, Klein sincerely felt that the core powers of a scholar of Yore were godly. After all, those that involved history and time were most likely extremely magical. However, in order to put it to use to its fullest potential, one had to have sufficient intelligence, and also make the necessary preparations. This was an unchanging requirement of the seer pathway. Yes, when summoning images from the historical void, there's no way to communicate with them. That is to say that a scholar of Yore can't interfere with history and change the past. From the angle of acting, this can be summarized as witnessing fate, affecting the present, and the inability to reverse the past. Apart from the ability to transfer a certain part of ailments, wounds, curses, attacks, prophecies, and observations to paper figurine substitutes, there's another power. It can transfer a certain part to the target. Before one discovers that it's fake, things can continue proceeding as per normal. Heh, if anyone meets me shortly after losing their heart, while their brain remains active, I can give them a paper heart. It can beat using the strength from history and continue circulating blood. The time it takes to attain initial control of spirit-body threads has shortened to 2 seconds, and completely transforming into a marionette takes 10 seconds. The maximum range for the two is 500 meters. By controlling a marionette, the limit to swapping positions is 5 kilometers. Flame jump is also 5 kilometers. I can freely control the might of air cannon, and at its maximum might, it's equivalent to a coastal defensive cannon. Can transform into a creature in which the difference in size does not exceed a certain limit. Some of the organs simulated can be used, while others are only decorations. Phew, this is a scholar of Yore who has digested most of the potion. After examining himself, Klein slowly stood up. He planned on entering the world above the gray fog to check on the changes in Sapphira Castle.